This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast.
Time for school.
Hey, school success makers. Today we're joined by my new friend Tim out of the great state of North Carolina. He's the head of school at a great Christian school there, and they're doing some amazing things. So I had to have him on the podcast. Plus, he knows some people that I know, so that made it also really fun. So I hope you enjoy this next episode of the School Success Podcast. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater. I'm joined by a new friend out of Greensboro, North Carolina, Dr. Tim Holland. Just got it, so we're going to mention it. Dr. Tim Holland, who is the head of school at Caldwell Academy there in Greensboro, and they're doing some awesome things, a great Christian school there, and we're going to dive into a ton of the stuff that they're up to and what they're doing. But as always, I never want to take thunder away from the guest. So with my sick, congested chest voice, I'm going to pass it off to him to introduce himself. So, Mr. Tim, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Well, Mitchell, thank you for the gracious introduction and the invitation to be a part of this today. Delighted to talk about education, which is something very near and dear to my heart. Just a quick introduction. I hail from South Florida, spent most of my life there. Did 4 years in Knoxville, Tennessee before transitioning here to Greensboro, North Carolina, where it's my privilege to serve as the head of school at Caldwell. And as you said, just a couple weeks ago, finished up my doctorate in organizational leadership at Vanderbilt University. So excited to cross that finish line and move on to what's next.
That is awesome. That's so much schooling. So how many years have you been in school now total from the start to finish of college?
Wow. I guess if you consider kindergarten through, that's like 22 years. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it that way before.
It's a long time, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear
No,
that.
it's all good.
That is awesome. Well,
It's a privilege.
congratulations again on
Thank
that.
you.
And I always like to ask the guests, you live there in North Carolina, what's fun to do where you are? What's some hobbies you like to do, but what's also Greensboro kind of known for that's really fun to do?
Yeah. I like to be outdoors. I run, I bike. Don't play basketball quite as much as I once did, but always, interested in doing that. Greensboro is, it's easy. It's an easy place to be a part of, to join. There's not a distance kind of with new people that you might find in other places. Easy place to raise a family, and I enjoy reading and playing guitar and sports, and there's plenty of that to go around here in Greensboro.
Right. And a big difference from South Florida, I would assume, would you say?
Yeah, it is. The thing about where here in Greensboro, you're a couple hours from the mountains, a couple hours from the ocean, so you can get to both pretty easily, and you get all 4 seasons. I don't love winter so much, but I do enjoy spring and fall. And right now, it feels about the same here, presumably, as it does in South Florida. So we're getting that same.
I always tell people, and I finally had somebody that backed me up on this, because people would go, "Oh, Florida, it's too hot in Florida. I couldn't live there." And I was like, "All right, where I live, there's always a breeze." And you're obviously from South Florida, there's
Yeah.
always a breeze. And so I asked somebody who's from Virginia, who used to live in Fort Lauderdale, and I said, "Is it hotter in Virginia or Fort Lauderdale?" He goes, "Hands down, it's Virginia." He goes, "There's no breeze.
Right.
It's so hot in the summer." He goes, "I would take Florida summers any day over Virginia." I was like, I'm glad somebody agrees, because everybody always complains about Florida and says we're such a hot place, but they're not. Maybe they're talking about Disney World in July.
Yeah, Orlando, right?
Yeah.
Central Florida. That's right.
That's a different ball game right there.
That's right.
Wow. Well, awesome. Well, I'd love to hear about your school a little bit. I love hearing about the size of the school. What are the ages that you serve? Is it K-12? And I love to know if it also is a part of a specific church that is like a giving or the sponsoring church of a school or not.
Yeah, so Caldwell Academy, we are in our 27th year here in Greensboro. We're a TK through 12th grade school. So TK is essentially a half day kindergarten for students that are preparing for that next step to go to full day after that. We just had our class of 2022 graduate on Friday. So it was fun to see our seniors finish up their journey here. We are not affiliated with the church. We're an independent school, independent faith-based school. So we operate strictly through our board, who provides policy and governance leadership. And I'm their single employee, and we operate in that manner.
Okay, very good. And uh, oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought here. Do sports? Oh, I love hearing about sports. Do you guys big into sports as a school, and like which ones are the best? Like you guys are really good with.
Yeah, yeah. Sports are a big part of who we are here. We've won. This is my second year at Caldwell. We've won a handful of state championships that I've been here back to back. Boys swimming state championship, the state champions. We won girls volleyball last year. Our girls volleyball program is one of the best in the state, certainly in our area. Um, our boys basketball program is on the rise, doing some good things. We think there's going to be a lot of success there over the next couple of years. Baseball made the Final Four last year. Girls soccer made the Final Four last year. So we've got a strong program and student athletes that work pretty hard.
Dang, that's incredible. Do you guys have kids that will go to Hayworth just because of sports, like as well as it something that's that sought after too in the area?
Um, More of our students will come here because of our academic reputation. We do have some student athletes that'll come here for that. We saw some students transfer in this year for that reason, but certainly whether it's our academic reputation or our faith-based emphasis and philosophy, that certainly has as much to do with it with the students that and the families that choose to bring their kids here.
Okay, awesome. Well, with this school, obviously you got a ton of kids that go there. I would love to, I know there's with that comes challenges. I'd love to hear about some of the certain challenges you guys are up against, but not just hear challenges because that could be boring, but challenges and how you guys are combating those and going against them to try and to kick them.
Yeah, you and I chatted briefly about this before. I think one of the biggest challenges we see that is certainly not unique to us is this pandemic languishing. The past couple of years have been really challenging. Um, there's a strange irony as an educator being asked to make high stakes decisions around how we have um, kind of pandemic COVID related protocols when I've never been trained to make those kind of medical decisions. And certainly I rely upon a team of medical advisors that have been really gracious to help us. But, there's been a weight, that has been on the shoulders of teachers and administrators. And, it's taken a toll. We've seen folks that have retired and perhaps stepped away sooner than they originally intended, just because the burden, was greater than they were prepared to bear. So, thankfully, I think we're in a place that we're beginning to emerge beyond that, but it's definitely been something that has taken up a great deal of our time and many educators' time over the past couple of years. We want to grow enrollment. North Carolina introduced charter schools about a decade ago, so a lot of private and independent schools have been kind of working on what it means to contend with some of these new options that are available to families and students in the area. So I think we're kind of past the novelty of that, but the school, 10 or so years ago, definitely felt the effects of that, and to some degree still do now.
Yeah.
So the way that we go about, I think, improving our value proposition in our community and being really clear about who we are and what we're emphasizing, what our philosophy is, I think makes a big difference in why families come and why families stay. Um, we've been given a lot of thought to that. And if I was to add something else, I would say, our country is as polarized now as we have been perhaps ever in my lifetime. And so things like COVID and other things that kind of find their way into our community can end up being really divisive. And so the way that we as educational leaders go about responding to that and being really thoughtful on how we manage some of those things has a lot to do with our success, because there's so many people out there. Amanda Ripley likes to call them conflict entrepreneurs, whose whole kind of economic platform is based on how can we rile up people's most base, emotions, and that because they know that in so doing, it tends to increase this platform that they've developed by dividing people. And so knowing that that's the society that we live in, and I find that trust seems to be harder to come by now, we want to really establish ourselves as trustworthy and honest and diligent and prudent in the way that we think about education and how we partner with our families. Because when families join our community, it's not simply about the education that we're providing to their children. That is what oftentimes is bringing them through the door, but they're also joining a community. I just watched over half of our graduates this Friday night that walked across the stage started here in kindergarten. So these are families that have traveled together for 13 years. This started here in 2009. So that's a pretty weighty thing. And when you make that commitment, that's a big chunk of your life that you're dedicating to. So we don't take that for granted, and we want to see that as an opportunity.
Man, so how many kids did that end up being then? For half, you said half the class has been with each other?
Yeah, so we had like 50 kids graduated, and we had like 26, 27 that have been here since kindergarten. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's cool. And I wonder if, and then probably some of them are probably going to go to college together too.
Yeah, and that's absolutely happening, which just extends it even further. So that's really neat.
That's awesome. The enrollment, when you mentioned enrollment, do you guys have a cap that you're trying to get to as well? Like we can only fit this many people in our building, so we only got this much room.
Yeah, there was a time in Caldwell's past where waiting lists were the norm. We're not there right now, and our campus, our physical plan has expanded since the time that was the reality for the school. We have new buildings and facilities to accommodate more students. So that's not something that we're up against right now, but I like to call those good problems, and we very much would be interested in getting to a place that we are kind of up against that again in the future.
Yeah. With some of the issues that people have brought up in these podcast interviews hovers around, enrollment being one of them, teacher retention and recruitment. Has that been an issue for you guys at all? And if it has been, I'd love to hear just some strategies maybe you guys have put into place to help with the teacher retention and recruitment side of things.
Yeah, I think I'll start with retention, and I alluded to earlier that we've started to see some retirements. Some kind of surprised us, caught us off guard. Others that maybe we could have seen coming. But the world that we live in now, from the inflation that we're seeing, just the financial realities of what everybody is dealing with, the way that we retain our teachers. It's important what we do financially, but it really goes beyond that, right? Because it's not just about a paycheck; it's also about the working conditions that we provide, and what are some of those additional things that we can make available to our teachers. Like, can we offer them childcare on work days? Can we offer after school care for them and make it really easy and not something that we're asking them to pay for, right? Those are things that make life a little bit easier, and just coming to work and knowing that you're valued, and the kinds of things that we do to try to care for them in that way really matter. From a recruitment standpoint, one of the things that we've seen here, and as I talk to fellow school leaders, we're seeing as competitive a landscape for making hires right now as I've ever seen. So you may have a certain budget number, and then you find that number isn't going to be the realistic number that it takes to get somebody hired. So we've had to stretch and recognize that in order to go out and get talent to fill the positions that we have, you've got to rethink the way that you're going about doing some things with your budget.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Every once in a while I throw a couple of right left punches for people, and they're like, "Oh, I wasn't ready for that one." So
yeah,
good job. I'd love to segue into giving you a chance to brag about your school. So you've been here for a couple of years, just sharing some things like, hey, this is going really, really good. We're proud of this. And if there's anything that can accompany that to give people an idea of how to do that themselves, if it's something that would make sense for that. But go ahead and brag about your school for a little bit.
Yeah, happy to do that. Always nice to have a chance to do so. As I spoke a little bit to before, our school's academic reputation in our community is strong. We don't see, if we see students that might decide to go elsewhere, it's not because they don't think the quality of education is strong, it might be because they think it's too strong in some cases. Um, so we're working on adding additional resources to students that might struggle in one area or another. But a really strong academic reputation. We have a classical methodology that says we want to really work to develop lifelong learners and not just be about college prep, and that's kind of the finish line. But what we do find is that when our graduates leave here and end up on college campuses, overwhelmingly they find themselves far better equipped and prepared than many of their counterparts that are often going to them saying, "Help me write this paper. I'm not ready to do this." Um, we have a great entry point. Our lower school, which we call our grammar school, is well loved, and our kids get an incredible foundation here that really prepares them for where they go next. Um, and one of the neat things that we do with our graduates is the night before they graduated, we did a senior recognition where a teacher spoke over and on behalf of every single graduate and spent 2 or 3 minutes just directly addressing them with their families, and they were just nailing kid after kid. Kids here, they are known and they're loved, and our parents really, really admire and appreciate that. And that has as much to do with the reason that they bring them here, which leads me to another thing that we really appreciate about our school, which is just the sense of community that we have. And anytime we have, a school-wide event, be that an auction, or we had an event last month called the Backyard Bash, which, is just kind of like a spring fair, if you will. We have a Veterans Day ceremony. Anytime that we do, campus-wide events, um, we tend to get great feedback on them. And the sense of community that we have with our parents, with our students, it's a very tightly knit community and something that we're really proud of and want to continue to build on. So we're leaning into that and always finding ways to try to build on that.
Love it. Love it. And you you mentioned something, and I'm gonna kind of piggyback a little bit off of it. And I've asked a couple people this about fundraising. So just getting different schools ideas, like what fundraisers have they done, what's worked really good, what's kind of maybe flopped. You kind of alluded to just a couple possibly there. Are there any that stand out to you that you're like, hey, we do this one every year, it's really successful, we make this much money or whatever? Do you have any of those you mind sharing?
Our annual fund is really the key mechanism that we use on an annual basis that we do in the fall to um, try to go to our families, and our families are really generous. I've found that we've been really successful here with those efforts. We had an auction last year, which we don't do every year. We don't want it to get stale, but that was we did it here on campus. It was the first time that we had welcomed everybody. We had students on campus last year, but we had really limited parent traffic, and so it was great to have everybody back last year. And our families were really generous around that. We're about to enter into a capital campaign here in the fall to build a new gymnasium, and so we'll certainly be relying on members of our community and generous donors to help us contribute to that as well. But we're very fortunate here to have folks that have a real vision and a heart for our school and what we do, and it makes a big difference because you really can't do what it takes to offer the education that we do well without people having that vision.
And last question I had for you, or I guess there's two more technically. The other one, I love asking the Christian school guests that we have on, do you require a statement of faith from families that attend, or does it kind of like, hey, our mission is we serve no matter who comes to our school, we serve everybody? Kind of which line did you guys pick as a school?
Yeah, so I've been in both environments, those that are that have a covenant, relationship with their
Mhm.
families, where somebody has to make a commitment of faith, whereas here at Caldwell we don't. We are very clear at the point of enrollment and admissions about who we are and the philosophy from which we teach. And so long as our parents are on board with that, we don't go beyond that in terms of asking for them to make any particular commitment to faith, but we want them to have a very clear understanding of who we are and the way that we're going to go about instructing their children.
Okay. Love it. Love it. Well, as we kind of wrap up the podcast, I always love ending with the same question I ask everybody, which is, or statement or question, is giving you a chance to share any advice that you would give or any piece of wisdom you give for any other school leaders that are tuning in.
Yeah, I mean, by no means would I suggest that I have the corner on the market here, but I think it goes without saying that the last couple of years have really stirred up a lot of thought and um, led to a lot of questions, and I think have led to people really rethinking some things about education. Now, that doesn't mean that we just sort of abandon everything that we used to do, but I think it's an opportunity for us to be nimble and adaptive and figure out, what ways can we use technology as a tool without saying that technology is the end that we're trying to get to. How can we incorporate lessons that we've learned from the pandemic in really healthy ways, both from our teachers and our employees? How can we better meet the needs that they have? How can we meet the needs of our families and our students in ways that can be really beneficial to them and profitable and in the ways that they learn? Those are a lot of the kinds of conversations we've had and continue to have. And we don't want to just say, let's just get back to normal and forget the challenges of the last 2 years, but let those challenges inform how we move forward, and hopefully ways that end up being productive and really helpful for everybody that's a part of our community. So education is such an important thing, and it's an incredible privilege to partner with families in the education of their children. So we don't want to miss out on that. We don't want to miss an opportunity for us to learn, to get better, and to be constantly improving, because when we get better, our school gets better. And when our school gets better and our instructional practice improves, that really impacts the students in a positive way. So I think that really represents what we've been thinking and talking a lot about.
And you nailed it. And I totally agree, because you guys are heroes. I mean, as teachers and school leaders, you're pouring into that next generation. And I'm forever grateful. That's why I love doing this podcast and meeting you guys from all over the country. And I've had some international ones already. And just everybody's pouring into these kids. It's not just the United States, it's everywhere, into that next generation. And sometimes it's a thankless job. I know. I think there's been those moments where it's just like, well, this is your job. You're supposed to teach my kid. But I am forever grateful for you guys. I love what you guys are doing and your leadership there at your school. So just want to say thank you again. Congratulations on your doctorate, and wishing you and your school nothing but the best as you guys continue to grow.
Mitchell, thanks for those kind and supportive words. And I appreciate, again, the invitation to be on here. I've enjoyed chatting together.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to Tim for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love what he's doing there at Caldwell Academy, and I'm just wishing him and his school nothing but the best as they continue to grow and educate that next generation that's coming behind us. And as always, I'm hoping you guys were able to take at least one thing from today's episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. And if you're a school in a spot right now where you're trying to grow enrollment but not really sure where to start, we'd love for you to reach out to us on our website, schoolsuccessmakers.com. That's schoolsuccessmakers.com. We specifically work with schools to help them grow enrollment and streamline that application process and automate it for them to give you way more time back in your day so you can focus on the most important thing in your school, and that is your students. If you're also on Facebook, I'd love you to join our private Facebook community just for school leaders called School Success Makers. I'm personally in there, and I'd love to see you in there as well. School Success Makers private Facebook group in Facebook, of course, just for school leaders. We will be here next week with another amazing guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then.